Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the show. I am so thrilled to have our first guest on the show today, and I couldn't think of somebody better than Miss Allison Cullen. So I found Allison about a year ago when I was doing some deep dives on human design research and specifically looking at human design as it relates to business. I'm not even sure how I got connected to Allison, but since she's been in my world, I feel like I have learned so much. And since the podcast episode that we recorded a couple weeks ago, where I was talking about 4 of my favorite tools and resources that have been game changers in my life, human design has definitely been one of those things for me. And so Allison has the coolest story of how she came about it. And I invited her on because I wanted her to both share her story and then also just teach us a little bit, because so many of you were so interested in human design and some of you had never heard about it before. Some of you knew just a tiny bit, but it is one of those things that every personal client that I work with, we get to the point of like, let's look up your chart. Let's see what's going on here. And one of my favorite things about human design that I'm sure Allison will be able to speak to is just how it pertains to so many different areas of your life and the way that you work best, like work in different situations, whatever that may look like for you, but like all the different ways that it can impact how we show up and the process of getting to know yourself better, which is what this show is all about. So Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so honored. I just found out I'm the first guest. So yay, I'm so excited to talk to your people.
One of, I think, the coolest things about you is that you have not really been doing human design that long, right?
Yeah.
What was your process of finding it? I know you had a full career before you even found this, which I think is really cool to talk about and be an expander for people who are maybe thinking about wanting to make a change in their job or what they're doing every day and doing something that they feel more passionate about. So what were you doing before this and how did you find human design?
So I just found this out today. You and I probably found out about human design around the same time. I think it was late 2017 or early 2018 that I heard about it on a podcast. Looked up my chart, which is basically the first thing that you do. I can send you a link so that your people can do that and get a free chart and all that.
Yes, that'd be great.
But I found out I was a generator, which I'll get into the 5 types here in a second. And I applied it to my life, probably mostly my career at the time. I was working in the music industry. I live in Texas. So right out of college, started working for a firm that does business management for musicians. So I had a bunch of Nashville clients and a bunch of clients in Austin, worked mainly in the country music industry, which I was a country music fan already. So this was sort of my dream job that I manifested just right out of the blue. And I had a blast. I loved it. Did that for over 15 years. So it was 2018 when I started playing around with human design, not like studying it or doing human design readings at all. Just found out about it, started implementing it. And then we started trying for a baby that year, got pregnant at the very end of the year. And then, when you get pregnant, if you've experienced this, your brain chemistry changes and you start getting, they call it pregnancy brain, but it's mom brain because it lasts like your whole life, I think. And I started realizing that everything that I was good at and very efficient at, like my numbers brain, my Excel brain, my accounting brain, it was taking me like 3 times as long to do everything.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, how's this going to work when the baby comes? Because I wasn't planning on having full-time childcare. I was planning on being pretty efficient and getting my work done in 3 or 4 hours a day so that I could be with her, taking a maternity leave and all that kind of stuff. But when I went back to work, just working part-time and being able to make that work with a full-time income, but part-time work, because I did work for myself. But as long as you get the work done, they don't know how long that is taking you.
Right.
So I was like, well, this isn't going to work because this is going to take me 9 or 10 hours a day to do this stuff. So I was like, well, maybe it'll go away once the baby comes. Maybe I'll go back to having my numbers brain. And I just got through and I made it work, and I didn't mess up too many things for my clients. And Caroline was born in September 2019. And I looked up her chart just because you're in the hospital and you're like bored and want to go home and all that kind of stuff. And I found out she's a reflector, which I'll get to, but it's the least common type.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really looked into the other types very much, but I started looking, like researching reflector, and I was like, oh my God, I have to know everything about human design. Like, I need to start diving in. I have to be a good mom to her. She's very different than me. And I'm very big now when I'm like coaching parents on not getting too involved in your kids' charts. Like, work on yours first, because they don't need to unlearn anything. It's us that need to do the unlearning. So we'll get there later, but I didn't need to do that in the first place. But I think it was very kismet, and I think it was meant to happen, because that's when I started really researching human design and had this inkling that this was going to be some part of my purpose. But I didn't know. I was on maternity leave. I wasn't getting certified anytime soon. So went back to work end of January, and then 6 weeks later, COVID hit.
Wow.
And the music industry shut down. And it was sort of God's little nudge to be like, here you go. Here, you can get on unemployment for 6 months. You can go get certified in human design. You can go start a podcast. And the reason I started a podcast, because I started doing readings for friends and family, and everybody had the same questions. So I was like, okay, I have a 6-month-old. Like, I need to be efficient with my time, and I don't have all the time in the world. I can't just be texting people back these long answers about human design. So that's why I started a podcast, just answering those questions and being like, okay, go listen to episode 3, go listen to episode 7. It was helpful for me. And then it just moved from there. And actually the end of 2020, my clients came back and they were like, okay, music industry is opening up again. We're starting to play again. You ready? And I was like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm not. And I hadn't quite replaced my income yet. It took another year to do that. But in the midst of that, I did manifest some what I call FU funds to make ends meet for a little while. And I was always willing to go back if needed, to go get some contracting work in business management and all of that. So I've always been like going with the flow, but I truly feel like this is my path for right now. And so when you start walking down that path, it's like things open up for you. Doors close that need to close, and doors open that need to open. And as long as you keep checking in internally with your intuition, I just think this was supposed to happen. It's the weirdest thing. It's been a big ego death, because that music industry job was everything to me my whole life. And it was hard letting it go. But this has been much more fulfilling, and the work-life balance and all that has been great too.
Yes. And I love that. I feel like a lot of times I talk about like, it's your mentality. It's like things happening for you, not to you. And that just feels like such a beautiful example. Like, I almost can't believe that. What a cool story. You clearly are being guided and led in this direction, just the timing of things. I just think it's so cool that you had the bravery to do that, and trusting you didn't know the big picture. You were taking these tiny steps along the way that felt aligned to you and were feeling good. Okay, I guess I'll just try the next thing, and then the next thing after that. I just think that it's amazing. And it's also what a great way to serve the world, because I feel like when I found out about human design, there's just not that many resources. And so in finding your podcast, You Do Woo, you guys should all go listen to Allison. She has the coolest episodes where you're talking about things in your life, and you bring on interviews and people who have different energy types, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that process of even just learning what it is. What is a profile? What is this? And you have these amazing episodes that people can go listen to once they look up their own chart, because it's this entirely new language, first of all. And I think you've done such a great job of distilling it down and making it more practical. So for the people in my community who either have no idea what human design is, or maybe they've heard some things, would you be able to take us through at least the different energy types and maybe one or two things about that type, so that when people do go look up their chart, which I'm sure they will if they haven't done that yet, that they could have like a really good starting point on their own journey?
Totally. Okay, so just for like a layman's terms definition too of human design, I almost say that human design is like if astrology and the Enneagram had a baby. That kind of vibe. And I love astrology, and I know that you've dove into astrology too. I'm an astrology newbie. So to me, human design's a little bit easier to grasp. It is similar to astrology in that you do have to put in your birth date. You don't go answer a series of questions like Enneagram, but it's almost like that. And the beauty of it is that it helps you realize your own specific energetic blueprint that is based on your DNA, which is why you have to put all that in. If you want like a deep dive onto this, I can send you another episode that I did that's talking about all the science behind it, but that's another thing. Anyways, so it's an energetic blueprint of how you operate when you're alone. And then you can also apply it to how you operate when you're around other people as well. So if you have a partner, your kids, family members, if you know their type, you can look at your charts together once you learn it more and see how you're affecting each other. But for the first part, just the 5 types I'm going to go through, this is when you're just by yourself. So if that makes sense. There are 5 different types, and I'll go through each really, really quick. I'll also give you a link where people can look up their chart and then go to their cheat sheet. It's a free cheat sheet. So if you're a generator, you have a cheat sheet that'll give you like a month worth of homework to start diving into all of this. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So generators and manifesting generators are most of the population, about 70% of the population. Generators have their own energetic motor. They create a ton of energy all day long, so long as they're doing something that really, really lights them up. And generators tend to work on a daily basis. And I'm going to go through this for each type so you can sort of feel out if this is resonating for you. Generators can work 8-hour days. I'm a pure generator. We have a lot of energy, but you'll avoid burnout if you're doing things that really feel juicy and flowy and fun and fulfilling and satisfying. So when I was working in the music industry, I had burnout like every 6 months. I would have adrenal fatigue, and I'm sure it was some things I was eating too. But I think so much of that also has to do with what you're doing every day for work. I was not moving my body enough. I was not doing things that lit me up for work. And the second that I switched careers, my adrenal fatigue healed. And I was not switching foods or anything yet. So it'll show you how much energy has to do with everything. I did then start eating cleaner and all of that kind of stuff, which made a huge difference as well. But just the switching careers healed my energy. Manifesting generators are in that 70% of the population, but they have a little bit more energy of a manifester, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And they have a lot of throat chakra energy, which you have too. You have a defined throat as a projector, which is really cool. So yay for starting a podcast, because that's magical. Manifesting generators can sometimes act as generators, sometimes act as manifestors. And if someone's a manifesting generator, feel free to DM me a screenshot of your chart, and I can tell you which side you lean more towards. Some lean more towards generators, and some lean more towards manifestors. So manifestors are about 9% of the population. Manifestors work a little bit more on a weekly basis. So they might have 3 or 4 days of like really intense, getting a whole lot done, initiating, making things happen, creativity, all that kind of stuff. And then 2 to 3 days of just like really needing to chill, like resting. So it's interesting. Sometimes like a morning routine isn't necessarily good for them. Like more so it would be like a on day morning routine and an off day morning routine. And they really need to follow urges that come and really be able to learn how to say no to things that don't coincide with that urge. It's like a very strong urge to create something or make something happen. Those days that they're feeling like that, they're very, very powerful and efficient. But the other days, they very much need to rest. So as you can see, our world is made for generators, period. Like it really is. Like the 8 to 5 workday is for generators. Manifestors are not meant to do that. They have big bursts of energy a few times a week, and then they're meant to chill. Projectors, which is what Sarah is, do work on a daily basis, but it's much more potent time frames. Like, whereas a generator could be working 8 to 10 hours a day, a projector really can get 10 hours of work done in a 3-hour time frame. Very, very efficient, but it's not a weekly schedule. It's more of a daily schedule. And I know you have your things you do like during the week. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, it's really family time, but it's not like it's chaos and like do whatever. You have like little projects and little things that you are doing on the weekends. So it's not just like laying in bed all day. Sometimes projectors don't have that strong of an internal energy motor inside of them. You get your energy from other people and situations, but projectors aren't just like napping all the time. It's not that kind of thing. You're just very efficient. You're really meant to be here to show us how to unlearn the generator conditioning. We were all raised as generators.
And like how much freedom that gives everybody to know that everybody is working in a different way and that's okay. And then the freedom to also be like, this may be different than the ways that I've learned or that the societal norms are. And let's just try it out and see, because it could be just very different, but you may end up feeling like so much more balanced overall when you're working in a way that you are more designed to be working. That makes sense. Yeah. I just find it very freeing. Like it's like, oh, it doesn't have to look like everybody else. And we need all the other types around us to balance things out. And that helps you give more grace to other people too, I think.
Yes, for sure. And projectors are about 20% of the population. I think that projectors are going to be growing. So I think that number is going to increase because I think we're walking into the season of the projector. So you're going to see a lot more projectors coming out of the woodwork, finding out they're projectors, leading other projectors to really work less and to be guides and to not just be worker bees, but to really start using their gifts and guiding other people. And then the last type are reflectors. This is less than 1% of the population. So these are really unique beings and they operate on a monthly basis. So they are lunar beings. And I feel like most of us women need to pay a little bit more attention to the lunar cycles and our menstrual cycles. But for especially reflectors, they are lunar beings. So they have many, like MINI, themes of their life every 28 days from full moon to full moon. It's really, really nuts. My daughter is this, and I try not to put her in a box. I try to just like allow her to show me these things. I don't talk to her about human design. I probably won't until she's like 7 or so, because like 0 to 7 is very, very formative years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put rules or boxes around her, and I just want her to show me these things. But reflectors very much can sense the health of a society, of a group, of a team. You put them in there and they can tell like if something is correct or not. And I've seen this show up with my daughter for sure. And with some of the adult reflectors, I know they have pretty intense stories about this. So those are the 5 types.
Thank you so much. I think it's so interesting whenever we're bringing on a new team member or the current team members, thinking about your kids. I loved looking up the charts for both my kids, and same as you. Like, I'm not going to really do anything with it. It's just more for me to know what things maybe to be looking for, or to know maybe the ways that we operate a little bit differently, and maybe internally for myself to remember that. Be on the lookout for these things, or they may have these certain gifts in certain areas. So to help encourage that, I just think it's a really cool thing to do. And also looking up for your partner, looking up for your friends, your close family members. When it comes to that, are there huge differences with, like you were saying, that looking it up for yourself versus how you are interacting with other people?
Yeah, well, I'm married to a projector. So
And I'm
for a
married to a generator, so I
yeah,
get you. Yeah,
yeah.
opposites.
So for so long, I would judge him for sleeping in or taking naps.
Right.
And not every projector is like a napper or anything like that. But for him, he works in the photo industry, so they have 10 to 12-hour days. He doesn't work every day, but when he goes on the long 3 or 4 days of working 10 to 12-hour days, like he's operating as a generator and he needs to be able to come home and sleep as much as possible without my judgment and shame. So whenever I learned that he was a projector and I started honoring that and being like, hey, fine, I take alone time while you go and nap. Or I'm a morning person, so I don't mind that he sleeps in, but he does the kids' bedtime now. So
Right.
that's great. I'm like, there's no resentment, whatever. So it sort of helps you to stop. I mean, projectors so feel like something's wrong with them anyways, a lot of times, because they were raised as generators if they haven't done work around that. And so if the partner can realize some of these things and start seeing them as ways to help that person heal and to love themselves and step into their self-worth and whatever, it makes a huge difference. And I've just now started asking for his help. So he started doing my digital cover art and stuff like that. And it's amazing. And I get a lot of compliments. And then he just loves that because he feels like he's being seen and everything. So
Yes.
asking for help, asking for advice, if you're in a relationship with a projector is like such a big deal, such a big
Mhm.
deal.
And we were talking earlier, Allison, about like how even for me starting this podcast, it was such a huge thing because it's Q&A based. Like people ask their question and therefore it feels so much easier for me to answer and to answer in a much deeper way because the question is being asked versus me choosing the topics. Here's what we're going to say. It's a very projector
Yeah.
podcast. In that
Yeah.
way, I feel like I'm waiting for that invitation from people. And it just feels so much more fun to me to do it that way. If it wasn't that format, I don't think that I would have a podcast. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so for those of y'all who don't know what Sarah's talking about when she says wait for the invitation. So after you find out your energy type, one of those 5, each of those energy types has what's called a strategy. So it's just a way to play around with that. And the projectors is the wait for the invitation. And sometimes there can be bitterness or resentment that comes when a projector just is like, well, here's what I think without being asked for their input. So that's what she's talking about when she says wait for the invitation. It's really cool. I always say start with your energy type, then go to your strategy, which I have all that information in my podcast, and then go to your authority, which is your decision-making process.
yes. Can you talk about,
Yeah, so there's many types of authority, like you're self-projected, which is pretty rare, which is interesting. You don't necessarily need like someone to tell you whether what you're thinking is right. You just need to be able to speak out your thoughts and hear them in a place that's safe and around people that are safe. And you don't need them to say like, yeah, you're right, or no, you're not right. It's just like hearing your voice in a safe environment. So that's only projectors, and it's when your throat center and your G center, which is the middle diamond, are attached. So that's what you have. I'm not going to go through all the authorities because there's several of them, but authority is your decision-making process. And this is where I think human design is very like a hugely helpful tool for everybody because most decisions we make in our life, we use our brain. Your brain is not for decision making as humans. It is for processing information, but really because of how evolved we are. Like we're not just running away from lions and tigers and bears anymore. We have the internet. We live in a different world. Because of how we are, we have to be going internally into our body to be making decisions. And I was like the biggest pro cons list girl ever of like, let me write them all. If there's 20 pros and 15 cons, then we're going with the pros, like whatever.
Totally.
And you know how many bad decisions are made by what looks good on paper. It's not the way to make decisions. However, it's really hard and scary to stop making decisions with your brain and start listening to your body. So human design is the tool that teaches you slowly how to do that. And there's different, depending on your authority, you have different centers. So for me, I have what's called sacral authority, which is it's like in your womb area, but it really affects your whole body. So there's only yeses or nos for me, and I don't have to talk anything out at all. In fact, for me, that's like a waste of time because it'll start getting me up in my head a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to go down and really feel in my gut if something's a yes or a no. And if it's not a heck yes, then it is either a no or a not right now. And then you have to sort of learn to trust that. For you, it's like most projectors don't have access to that really fast yes or no. It's sort of a process of getting there and a slower process. And that's beautiful and awesome. And for you, it's using your voice and making sure that you are in a place that doesn't feel too chaotic to be able to make a yes or no decision and being able to have some time to mull on that and to talk it.
Yeah. Like such a helpful thing to just confirm about myself. And I find that conversations, I'm like, I can tell you tomorrow. I actually have no idea how I feel about that today as you're saying it to me. Like I hear the words, but I don't have the feel yet. So I have to wait for that feel sometimes, which can be very frustrating for people around me or my team and my husband. I'm like, I'll let you know. I'll get back to you. Not.
But the cool thing is that the more people who know about human design then will know this, and you don't take it personally. You're just like, well, that's the way, that's your authority. I have to honor that, you know?
Right. It's so cool. And what I love too is that there's like so many layers to human design. I feel like just starting out, you start with your energy type and there's a lot there to learn or to unlearn or to look into. And then looking at the steps 2 and 3 of what are those different things for you and looking at profile. I mean, it even goes into food, like how you eat best or how you digest. And so it feels like this, I don't know, it's like a long-term study that you can have, like a view into yourself, which is, at least for me, one of the things that feels so appealing. Like you're never really done. And there's always more whenever you're ready. I feel like for myself, it's just been, I don't know, like a 5-year journey. And I'm still, because of your help, learning. I'm like, what does the J center mean? Like, what does the authority, what does that really mean? And so I just think you do such a great job of distilling something that feels a little complicated and a little overwhelming when you maybe first look at it, but breaking it down and being able to go at a pace that works for wherever people are at in their life. Yeah. I think it's a cool thing. Yes.
Thank you.
So and your podcast is truly amazing if people are wanting to learn more. What other ways or suggestions do you have for people? They're hearing this is interesting. Where can I learn more about this and about what you do?
Totally. Well, I do have 3.5 years of episodes backlogged for you, but don't make fun of my first episodes because I was just talking. I didn't have the whole setup like you do. I was literally recording in my phone. It was so funny. So maybe maybe go check out 2023 episodes, but I do have a way that you can get a free chart that leads to a cheat sheet for your type. And that will probably give you about a month's worth of homework really to dive into.
When you sent that to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, great. This is what I need. Yeah.
So just take your time with that. Reach out to me on Instagram. Let me know if you have any questions about the cheat sheet and start going little by little through the episodes. A lot of my episodes are solo, just little snippets of like, hey, if you're a 6'2" profile, listen to this episode, blah, blah, blah. So start going through the solo episodes really slowly and digest them and all of that. And then try to find some role models for your type. So if you're a projector, Sarah's a great projector role model, and you can DM me and tell me what you are, and I can give you others based on your career or where you are in your life. And if you're a mom, all that kind of stuff. Find some people to follow, because so many times that's the biggest mistake that I see is people finding role models who don't have the same energy type as them and or who are not following their energy type, and you don't know what is going on behind the scenes. Like, I've been in so many rooms with women who just seem like they have all their stuff together online, and then they're just basket cases behind the scenes. And hey, I am all for emoting and being a crazy person sometimes, but does your behind the scenes life match up with what you're trying to quote unquote be online? Right. So, I mean, I don't know you. I don't follow you around your hometown, but it seems like it's pretty aligned with you, your behind the scenes life, what you show up as, and being a projector.
Yes, I would say definitely so. And my best friends who see me in the swirls of motherhood and pick up and drop, just in the real life stuff. This is very much what it is. This is the way that I am. This is the way I talk. This is the way I do things. It's the way I think about things. But I think that's such a good piece of advice because particularly for me, when I found out a projector, there wasn't a ton of examples. But now that I'm learning more and listening and paying attention, and it even makes me curious too. Like, I wonder what their type is, and just seeing how they work and their flow with stuff too is really cool to see. That's a great piece of advice.
You'll be finding out soon more people's types because human design is like coming out of the woodwork now. Like everybody's talking about it. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's so amazing. Well, Allison, thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving us these really great tidbits of places to start. And following and finding her at You Do Woo, you guys will learn so much more. And she's just a delight to follow. I also feel like the sound of your voice is so calming and soothing, and particularly as a projector and as a mother, I'm like, when I want my alone time, it's like such a nice voice to listen to and to learn something as you go. So thank you so much for being here. We will put all of your links and where to find you in the show notes. And thank you for taking time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yes. Okay. We'll see you next week, you guys. Be back soon. And if you have any questions or want to share what type you are, I would love to know. Let us both know as you start this journey. It's a really fun one to go on. Okay. See you guys next week. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.